Welcome to this video introduction for the fifth and final session of a short tour of Mark's Gospel. When you look at the worksheets, you'll see that they're labelled 5A and 5B. There's a lot of material in this session, so feel free to spread it over a couple of days. The session today starts off at looking at issues of controversy in Jesus' life. Controversy between Jesus and the religious leaders. We'll start off by stepping back into the days of Jesus' Galilean ministry, where there are controversies over healing and sin, over eating with outcasts, about fasting, about breaking the law of the Sabbath. And then we'll move on to some of the conflicts that take place within Jerusalem. Now, in the session we looked at last week, the disciples were very much centre stage as Jesus taught them about the meaning and cost of discipleship. In chapter 11 onwards, the disciples become bystanders, observers almost, as they see Jesus involved increasingly with conflicts with the authorities. They try and catch him out. What right have you to do this? Again, should we pay taxes? Questions about relationships. All of these conflicts are arranged around a parable of the vineyard tenants, which is quite pointedly aimed at the authorities, and they respond by wanting to arrest him. Some people describe Mark's Gospel as a passion narrative, the story of Jesus and the cross, with a long introduction. And it's at this point that we encounter what leads up to the cross. After that first Palm Sunday that we looked at last session, we come now to the anointing at Bethany. And that leads into the Last Supper. The Last Supper is portrayed by Mark, as it is by Matthew and Luke, as a Passover feast. But Mark goes into less of the details about the Jewish background. For many of Mark's readers, we believe, were non-Jews in that multicultural context of Rome. Jesus then prays in Gethsemane and is betrayed by Judas. And then we have the long narrative of the arrest and crucifixion, which we deal with on the worksheet in some detail. At the end of that comes that line we mentioned a couple of sessions ago, where it's a Roman centurion who realizes who Jesus is and says, this man truly was the Son of God. The messianic secret that has run throughout Mark's Gospel reaches its climax at this point. Jesus dies and is buried. 5B worksheet deals with the meaning of Jesus' death and what we mean by the resurrection. There are lots of different ways of understanding both of those events. And at the time of Mark, the early Christian community was facing conflict and fear. And if you look at your copy of Mark's Gospel in chapter 16, you'll probably find a short footnote occurs in verse 8, where the original version of Mark's Gospel, we believe, finished with the words, "They said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid." Our modern translations include a couple of appearances of the resurrected Jesus after that. But in the original narrative, the Gospel finished there, which would have struck a chord with a community that were afraid in Rome as they tried to live their life as Christians in a society that threatened them in so many ways. What do we mean by resurrection? Resurrection is an experience that we can feel in our own lives. In many different ways, resurrection is that God's love is stronger even than death itself, and that we live with the risen Christ in our midst. I hope you've enjoyed this course. If you have, try and look for some of the others that we have on the website from time to time and enjoy them. Thank you.